He might not be the X-Men's most famous foe, but the Juggernaut has been around for over 50 years, with a complicated history that ties him to everyone from Spider-Man to Professor X to Doctor Strange. If you want to know his story, here's the truth behind Cain Marko, the unstoppable Juggernaut. The Uncanny X-Brothers. Before the Juggernaut even appears on panel in Uncanny X-Men number 12, Professor Xavier fills the X-Men in on his origin story. As a youngster, the smart and sensitive Charles was bullied by his older stepbrother, Cain Marko. They were rivals their whole lives, although Xavier was able to get the upper hand when his psychic powers manifested. When the pair happened to cross the sacred lost temple of Cyttorak, however, Cain grabbed a ruby from a strange-looking statue, and it transformed him into the unstoppable behemoth known as the Juggernaut. The cave collapsed and buried Marko, but it turns out that unstoppable wasn't just a catchphrase. Years later, Marko returned to hunt down his stepbrother with a distinctive helmet which made him immune to Professor X's psychic powers. That first battle with the X-Men, like many that followed, was all about getting that helmet off, enabling Xavier to lay down the psychic whammy.
I'm trying to attack his mind, but I can't get through.
His helmet protects his mind from probes.
The power of Cyttorak. It wasn't mentioned in the early stories, but in 1992's Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme number 44, Cyttorak was revealed to be a demon who had been banished to another dimension. He's a being of destruction and chaos, which is why he chooses earthly avatars like Cain Marko and grants them the power to cause untold devastation in his name. In a 2015 storyline, Cyttorak's appearance was redefined, mirroring the Juggernaut's traditional red armor and domed helmet by making him a big red creature with a large domed head. By giving shape to the character and motivations of Cyttorak and showing the Juggernaut as his earthly avatar, Cain Marko's actions were given a whole new meaning. They were chaotic, to be sure, but they were exactly as chaotic as Cyttorak wanted them to be. Black Tom's BFF. In Uncanny X-Men number 101, Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum introduced one of the weirdest partnerships in comics when the Juggernaut teamed up with Black Tom Cassidy, the cousin of the X-Man known as Banshee. In the first story, their alliance really only existed to justify the Juggernaut's surprising presence in Cassidy Keep, but the pair remained allies for years, and it's safe to say that Black Tom got the better end of that deal. The Juggernaut is, after all, a legendarily unstoppable supervillain who can level mountains and bring down buildings with a single punch. Black Tom Cassidy, on the other hand, is more of a schemer, and at one point suffered from a disease that was turning him into a tree. Not exactly the most threatening mutant, but when your real power is being best friends with the Juggernaut, you don't really need to be. Juggernaut versus everybody. While he tends to square off against the X-Men, the Juggernaut's path of destruction isn't just limited to the mutant corner of the Marvel Universe. After all, a huge guy who smashes through walls and can't be stopped by any known force is a useful sort of all-purpose villain to have around. He met Doctor Strange for the first of several battles in 1969, since getting his powers from a demonic artifact made him a natural villain for the Sorcerer Supreme. While the X-Men were taking a break in the early 1970s, the Juggernaut fought the newly blue beast in Amazing Adventures number 16 and took on Marvel's other famous unstoppable behemoth in The Incredible Hulk number 172. He would throw down with Thor several times, including a story that also introduced a team of young heroes known as the New Warriors, and even fought his share of bad guys during a brief stint as a member of the X-Men. And of course, he slugged it out with Deadpool on plenty of occasions. The Juggernaut's greatest battle, however, might also have been the single best story he ever appeared in. Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut. In that story, Juggernaut arrives in New York City in an attempt to kidnap the psychic Madam Web. Spider-Man tries to stop him, but finds out that the title of the story is pretty accurate. Fortunately, stopping the unstoppable is what Spider-Man does. For all of his spidery abilities, one of Peter Parker's most important traits is his unwillingness to give up, no matter how hopeless things might seem. Rather than trying to match the Juggernaut physically, Spider-Man eventually outsmarts his unstoppable foe by tricking him into burying himself in 40 feet of wet cement. The greatest bar fight ever. The Juggernaut has met the X-Men on plenty of different battlefields, but the most memorable might be a dive bar in Manhattan. It happened in Uncanny X-Men number 183, and was set in the aftermath of the original Secret Wars. Among other things, that crossover saw Colossus falling in love with an alien who promptly died, leading him to break up with his longtime love interest Kitty Pryde once he returned to Earth. Unfortunately for Colossus, Wolverine has always been protective of Kitty and decides to take his Russian teammate out to a bar, get him drunk, and then beat him up. He's spared the trouble, however, by the coincidental appearance of an out-of-costume Kane Marco. Wolverine manipulates the two into fighting, and then he and Nightcrawler stand back and watch as the two super-strong giants have one of the greatest barroom brawls of all time. The entire establishment is destroyed in the fight, although the Juggernaut surprises everyone by donating a massive roll of cash to fund its reconstruction. He takes off, Colossus learns his lesson, and Wolverine is satisfied with the night out. X-Men: The Last Stand. The Juggernaut made his cinematic debut in 2006's X-Men: The Last Stand. With a very charitable 58% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, that movie is commonly regarded as a bit of a mess, partly because it introduces a ton of characters from the comics without taking the time to actually make them characters. The Juggernaut, played by Vinnie Jones, definitely suffers from this problem, although there's one pretty memorable scene.
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
When Juggernaut is chasing Kitty Pryde through a large building, Kitty uses her mutant powers to pass through the walls, but the Juggernaut simply smashes through them like the battering ram that he is. And as cool as that action is, the Juggernaut dropping a reference to a viral video featuring a fan-dubbed episode of the X-Men cartoon is even cooler. Deadpool 2. The Juggernaut's surprise appearance in Deadpool 2 wasn't advertised, but at this point the word is out. Unlike The Last Stand, Deadpool 2's Juggernaut is an entirely digital creation and gets to have a massively over-the-top fight with his old comics rival, Colossus. In the credits, Juggernaut is listed as playing himself, but screenwriter Rhett Reese revealed to comic book resources that Juggernaut's voice and facial capture are actually performed by the same actor as Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds. Colossus, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and Yukio managed to knock the Juggernaut out at the end of the film, but his return for future sequels seems inevitable. After all, nothing can stop the Juggernaut. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.